What's the best map in TF2? Badwater, obviously. Okay, what's the worst map in TF2 then? Well, that's Junction, obviously. Okay, a shorter video than I was expecting. Junction is claustrophobic, it doesn't cater for every class, it's not very visually appealing, and well, it's just kinda yucky. Which reminds me, Yukon might be a close second. To be completely transparent with you though, these answers are not 100% scientifically sound. They are of course just my opinion. What even is the criteria for a good and bad map? Some of the most important factors that I think of are good balance between the two teams, good balance for all of the classes, a map that's easy to understand, visually appealing or interesting, with little or no wasted space, a strong theme, maybe it encourages movement, has good health or ammo placement, and I'm sure you guys could list many more things, but I would say the most important thing of all is, do people enjoy playing on it? And so with this in mind, there are 3 things I wanted to do today to help me form a slightly better picture as to what the best and worst maps are in TF2. Number 1, find out what the community thinks. Number 2, ask an expert. And number 3, take a look at the data. That just means data, but in American speak. And before we start, I wanted to first say a massive thank you to the guys at Teamwork.tf, especially Makamoto for helping me out, as well as to Crash, a very talented map designer who I'm sure you're all familiar with, for again helping me out and answering some of my questions. I asked you lot what your favourite and least favourite maps are, and thank you very much for your awesome response. This is what you said. You voted Upward and Badwater as clear winners, with 15 and 17% of the votes respectively. Also popular were Toofty, Dust Bowl, Harvest, Hightower and Sweden, all with 7% of the vote. Any surprises so far? Well, I didn't expect to see Sweden here, but other than that, the other maps I kind of expected to see. If you do want to see the full set of results, I'll flash it on the screen here so that you can pause if you're interested to take a look. Bear in mind that these are the most popular 20 maps in terms of average player count, but I gave the option to also reply to the tweet if your map wasn't listed. And it's worth noting that Steel was surprisingly popular too. This got 3 or 4 votes in the comments. Moving over now, perhaps more interestingly, to your least favourite maps. This tweet got a lot more likes. Maybe it's true that people on the internet just love to hate. Anyway, you guys voted Toofty as your least favourite map, followed by Turbine, Thunder Mountain, Junction, Brazil, Dust Bowl and Hoodoo. The first thing you might notice here is that Toofty and Dust Bowl seem to appear in both of the 2 lists. These maps and several others can be very divisive, and this is probably in part due to the fact that they are so popular. Anyway, most of these I did expect to see, but personally I was really shocked to see Thunder Mountain in this list. I had no idea that this map was hated so much by the community. I kinda love this map personally, but fair enough. I also didn't expect to see Brazil so high on the list, but now I come to think of it, yeah, it's kinda naff. Again, here is the rest of the data in case you're interested. Just bear in mind that in this case I didn't provide a poll and instead simply asked for replies to my tweet, as I felt like your least favourite maps would be a bit more all over the place. And what I mean by that is, some of them would be super popular maps and others might be more obscure. So this portion of the video will be quite short because I don't really know that many expert map creators. However, one that came to mind was Crash. I contacted UEAK Crash, who is a prolific map creator from the TF2 community, who I'm sure you're all familiar with. He's created loads of maps, many of which I'm sure you've played on yourself, such as Probed, Trainsaw Laser, Moonshine Event and Shore Leave, one of my absolute favourites, to name but a few. I spoke to Crash and I asked him to name his favourite map, a map that he thinks stands out above all others, and he confidently replied to me, Upward. He talked about the importance of maps being fun for every single class and put forward this one as his personal favourite and as one of the maps he thinks is most well designed. When I asked him what was his least favourite map, he graciously said he would prefer to stick to the positives, which I completely respect and admire, and which also made me feel a little bit awful for talking about this side of the conversation. So I'll just add in here that I don't mean to hate on anyone who has created a less popular map. Designing and building a map is a hugely difficult and time-consuming task which takes whole bunch of skill and experience, and so I don't want to belittle that fact by any means. But it's just a bit of fun to have this discussion. It is interesting to note that a map could go completely unnoticed and be technically brilliant on paper, and I'm sure this is the case for some of the maps in TF2, but it's nice to know that at least Upward, an immensely popular map, has earned its status not by luck, but by the fact that it's so well designed, both in terms of gameplay and balance, and also in terms of how beautiful the scenery and environment is too. The guys behind Teamwork.tf have a system in place that collects TF2 server information every 5 minutes, which is kind of mind-blowing. It looks at every single server that is running and scrapes a bunch of information such as the server name, the IP, the map, rules, number of players, the playtime, and much more. If you head to the website yourself, you can see the most popular official and unofficial maps. Take a look if you're interested. But I wanted to dig a little bit deeper and take a look at the least popular maps, and also filter this list by game mode so we could see what the most popular and least popular maps are for every single game mode. So to start with, here is every single official map in order of their average player count since 2017. And these are the playable maps, ignoring Halloween maps and redundant game modes such as Arena. There you go. Kind of interesting, right? I hope you enjoyed that. What I'll do is I'll put this at the end of the video, just in case anyone's interested to take a look at the comprehensive set of data. But for now, what we're going to do is focus at the very top and bottom of this list. Looking at the top of the list, we are able to see a lot of the same maps come up that we saw from the previous poll, which is kind of what we would expect. Maps that people love get played a lot, it makes sense. And as we discussed before, many of these maps are clearly quite divisive, as they feature in both the list of favourites and least favourites. We can also derive a few other things from this, such as Turbine, enjoyed by many, but it also seems to be hated by many people, but very few people seem to consider it their favourite map. Because a lot of people enjoy it, it comes up in rotation a lot, and therefore this may fuel the hatred for it for those who aren't a big fan of it. Anyway, if we exclude the maps that feature in our list of least favourites, if we take out those maps that are popular that some people really hate, we end up with just 3 left. Upward, Badwater, and Frontier. All these 3 maps are massively popular and also favourites for many people, and so that's why I think these are great candidates for the official best map of TF2 badge. Let's take a look now at the other end of the spectrum, which I think is even more interesting. These are the 20 least played official TF2 maps. There's a lot of quite unpleasant stuff here, but a lot of these maps are from hidden or unusual game modes that nobody really plays. So what I'm going to do is highlight those that I consider to be from more standard game modes. And as you can see, Yukon is probably the least played map from a standard game mode, which isn't too surprising. Most of these maps I would probably tend to avoid myself. The only ones that stand out to me are perhaps Pipeline, possibly just so low on the list because no one really plays Payload Race. Vanguard, a map I don't particularly hate. And finally, Metalworks, which is actually a map I really enjoy, and it's a shame to see it so far down in the list. We can also see by looking at this data that Control Point is likely a less popular game mode in general, and we don't really see any Koth or Payload maps make an appearance at the bottom of the list. And the fact that some game modes are vastly more popular than others has a massive influence on what maps are at the bottom of the list. And so I thought it would be interesting to take a look at what the most and least popular maps are for some of the main game modes. So for CP, we have Yukon and Dust Bowl. For Koth, we have Badlands and Harvest. For Payload, we have Enclosure and Upward. And for Payload Race, we have Pipeline and Hightower. And one more thing before we finish up, we can also take a look at the non-official maps, the back rooms of the TF2 world. There are hundreds of people who are playing on Trade Plaza every day. Some say they're trapped. Some say if you listen into the wind, you can hear their cries for help, for their souls to be saved. Although it's impossible to categorically say what the best and worst maps in TF2 are, the data certainly helps to paint a picture. Of course, popularity does not necessarily equate to quality, but it's a good indication that people are enjoying a map, and as I said before, I think that's the most important factor when considering if a map can be deemed good or not. Despite the hate that maps like TF2, Turbine and Dust Bowl get, it's hard to ignore how popular they are and how clearly thousands of people are enjoying them every single day. If a horrific, repetitive, choky, stalematey, painful, endless hellscape of a map is enjoyed by thousands of people, then I guess it's an alright map. One other thing we have to keep in mind is that some of these maps or game modes are more hidden in the UI than others and often deselected by default, so this too massively influences the data. But with all this in mind, if I had to name a map the best map in TF2 based on the data and your feedback, I would give this award to Upwater. Badwater or Upward, I don't know, they're both masterpieces, they're both beautiful, you guys can decide. And you know what, I'd still give the worst official map award to Junction. My reasoning, Yukon is less popular, but it seems to offend less people. But I think I'm allowed to give the most overrated map award to 2-4 at least, and I think the most underrated map award is deserved by Metalworks. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I think it's really interesting to delve into the data like this, and it's interesting to see which maps are timeless classics and loved by the community, and which of those are more divisive and contentious. In this video we focused on casual TF2, but I wonder what would be considered the best and worst maps in the world of competitive Sixes or Highlander. Like I said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, thank you for my Patreons for supporting me, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
We have dropped the enemy intelligence.